What are some of the answers you think we could do?
And I ain't
Just
got all the answers,
no,
Sway.
I understand. You're right. I ain't got the answer, Sway, but look, I asked that to everybody. I had
Mhm.
judges on and everybody. You know, my thing is, like you say, have all the answers neither, but I'm hoping maybe somebody hear a piece of something that somebody said and we can kind of put something together. But something has to be done. Hey, what's up? What's up, everybody? You tuned into another episode of Strategic Moves. I'm your host, Ken Dow. Today is MLK's birthday, Martin Luther King's birthday. And so today we're going to talk about disrupting inequities. We're going to dismantle a little racism, and we're going to do it and try to accelerate. Talk about how you accelerate change in doing that. And who we're going to do that with is none other than our own president of our local NAACP here in Cleveland, Ohio. As you all know, we have NAACPs all around the state of Ohio, and Cleveland has the best, trust me. And we have our president, and her name is Miss Kayla Griffin. She is the president of the NAACP. So everybody, welcome Kayla Griffin to the show.
Thank you so much. Glad to be here. MLK Day.
It's MLK Day, and it's a great day to be black.
Listen,
Yeah?
every day is a great day to be
Great
black.
day to be black. Every day is
Every
a day.
day.
So, Kayla, you are new president of NAACP, and you're going to have a conversation. And I won't lie to you. It's been a while since I've been involved in the NAACP. I was involved in it. Mike Nelson was the president of the NAACP.
He brought me in.
Yes, I know. I did my research on you,
Okay.
so I had to call everybody to be like, okay, Kayla's coming on my show, man. Who is she? Where did she come
Yeah.
from? How did she get there, man? How did
Yeah.
that happen? And so we went through all of that. So I got some background on you, and he told me a lot of good things about you.
Very good.
And that's Kayla in all fashions of program and being a straight up Clevelander. And we just talked about that. Where are you from? Because we got to know everybody's business before we get started. So tell us,
I was
Kayla,
like, where you from? What hood you from? Who your people?
Yeah.
I am actually from Youngstown. I'm from
Okay.
Youngstown, Ohio, right up the road.
Mhm.
I have been in Cleveland for about 11 years now.
Okay.
So I came to Cleveland for law school.
Ah, okay.
Yeah,
You got brothers and sisters?
I do.
Yeah.
I'm the oldest. I got some young ones. They came up, all but my middle brother.
Mhm.
He wasn't able to make it, but they came up today. We had our swearing in for our officers and the board.
Oh.
But I am the oldest. It is 4 of us.
Mhm.
We grew up on the north side. I went to Youngstown Public Schools. I went to Kent State, graduated from Kent, and then started law school and ended up in Cleveland.
So it was you, your mom, dad, sister, brothers all growing up?
Yep.
I this is news on you. I heard you was an athlete.
Who told you that?
Aha, see, I found out. I heard you was an athlete. You got a scholarship, actually, or you could have got a scholarship.
Well, if my knees would have held up, I might have.
Oh, now check this out, because this is something that when I heard this, it really put you on the top of my list, because I heard one of the sports that you could have got a scholarship in was softball.
Who told you that?
Yes, and I heard you was a pretty good player as well.
Listen, I'm not bad.
What position you played?
So I was outfielder. I had some speed on me.
Okay.
So they put me, outfield.
Mhm.
And I was good at it, but it
Mhm.
wasn't my love.
No,
I really loved basketball.
really.
My dad was a basketball coach growing up. And so even like, I see cats out now and they be like, how's Coach Griff? They still
Mhm.
call him Coach Griff. And I'm
Mhm.
like,
Wow.
he definitely made an impact. So as a young person, me and my brother, we would spend time at the gym while he was coaching. But,
Okay.
when you starting off young, my parents put us in everything. So I think I started off in T-ball, played soccer, ended up in softball. I feel like you don't have to be like an all-star to be a softball. Like you got to know how
Right.
to hit.
Right.
But like fielding, you just kind of have to be able to run and throw.
Outfielding was pretty hard for some people.
You got to run and throw. You got to know how to get under the ball. You got to know how to
Exactly.
run and throw.
Exactly.
And so I stuck with softball and I stuck with basketball.
How tall are you? You played basketball.
I
I
was
mean,
a-
you walked in here. You was
I
about.
was a point guard. I was a shooting guard and I was
Okay.
a point guard. So
Okay.
I was a shooting guard most of my life. And then
Mhm.
my junior year, they moved me to point guard.
Okay.
But I tore my ACLs.
Yeah.
Both of them.
Both of
I
them.
tore my right ACL my freshman year. So I played varsity all through high school.
Mhm.
And I tore my ACL my freshman year, but I got enough to still letter my first year. So I was
Okay.
like, even though I was out half the season, I played enough to still letter. And then my junior year, I tore my second one. They say that for women, the way just our body structure is set up,
Mhm.
if you tear one and continue to play in athletics, you more than likely,
Tell the other one.
yeah, more than likely to tear the
Oh.
other one. So I tore both, recovered, I finished out my senior year, but still played softball for those 2 seasons that I did not tear.
Wow.
I was pretty good
Wow.
at softball, but
So after that, you
basketball,
say, "Hey, I gotta hang up my
it was
cleats, son,
listen,
and put up the basketball."
you get a fear of like, what if I do it again?
Mhm.
And so you baby some certain things, and it's like, all right,
Mhm.
might not have the strength. And so when I got to Kent, I didn't get the scholarship
Mm.
because I missed so much time. And by that time, it was kind of like, is this still something that I want to pursue?
Mhm.
My freshman year, I tried out for the team, and they were like, well, you're pretty good. Like, we'll put you on the practice squad.
Mm.
I was like, is this
Okay.
what I want to do?
Right.
And so I decided to walk away from it and just kind of focus on what I wanted to do. I always wanted to be an attorney. I wanted
Mhm.
to be a lawyer. I wanted to be a juvenile defense attorney.
Mhm.
So I kind of really honed in when I was in school on my oral speaking. I took communications.
Okay.
I got involved in various clubs and programs and things like that so
Mhm.
that I could hone in those skills
Mhm.
and focused on taking the LSAT so I can make it to law school.
Oh, so you are now a lawyer?
I am.
Oh, okay. So what law school you went to
I
then?
went to Cleveland State University.
Oh, okay. Excellent. Excellent. So you got out of college and you kind of decide you want to get into helping juveniles and that part of the law. How did that go?
Yeah, so my first year of law school, I realized that I hated it.
Ah, most people do.
Most people do. That's the
Everybody I
secret.
talk to, they say that same
They're
thing.
like, I didn't understand it when I was a young person.
Mhm.
All the attorneys would be like, "Don't go to law school. Like, you don't really want to do it." I'm
Right.
like, "No, this what I've always wanted to do."
Mhm.
And then my first semester of law school, I was like, "Oh, I hate this. I
Mhm.
hate this so much." But I'm an athlete, and so I don't quit.
Right.
And so it was like, "Well, I'm here now. I quit.
Correct.
What does that look like?"
Mhm.
So I really had to do some like soul searching about, okay, why did I come to school? What does this look like?
Mhm.
Came to school thinking that I was going to be a juvenile defense attorney. That was my goal, to be a juvenile defense attorney. But once I got into school, I started really understanding how the courts worked. I
Mhm.
understood better policy
Mhm.
and how the system was rigged against us. And I'm
Mm.
like, by the time a young person gets to court,
Mhm.
by the time you need an attorney, it's too late. And
Wow.
so, what can I do and how can I use this degree to help so that they don't get there?
Mhm.
And so we can try to divert their path that way. And so I started to understand how like public policy works and the people who created the laws
Mhm.
and what that looks like,
Mhm.
and decided I'll get the law degree, but I want to really focus on like policy, because if we can cut it off before a young person gets to court, then maybe we can help save a life there. And so that's how I maneuvered through and made it through school, because I was like, if the only thing I have to look forward to is going into court and standing next to somebody who needs defense and a defense attorney, then I'm going to be miserable. And it's not going to make wholesale change because you're impacting one life at a time,
Mhm.
as opposed to impacting a structure that can really help to keep young people out of the system.
So what types of moves did you make in order to get you down? What did you do?
Yeah, so I ended up getting a master's of public administration as well.
Okay.
Law school is fine,
Mhm.
if you're going to practice, but it doesn't teach you how policy works, and it
Mhm.
doesn't teach you how our government system really operates. And so once I went to Cleveland State Levin College
Okay.
and started taking public policy courses,
Mhm.
things like that, the legal component made so much more sense. If I had a law school, I would probably do a lot more teaching of what happened. Like, we deal with the laws once they become law, but it's like, how do we get to a thing becoming a
No
law
law.
in the first
Right.
place?
Mhm.
That was what really illuminated so much in me.
Advocacy.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And understanding. So I did my thesis on juvenile justice and restorative justice practices, right?
Okay.
So that was my thesis in my master's program.
Mhm.
And I did a lot of research on the 60s and 70s, how the juvenile detention centers were on a decline, and
Mhm.
they were proposing that in 30 years that there would be no more juvenile detention centers, that the way crime and our crime rates were moving,
Mhm.
that things were decreasing so exponentially that in 30 years we would no longer need juvenile detention centers.
Hmm.
Well, here we are, and I get to law school in 2011, And it's like we're busting at the seams when it comes to juvenile detention
Mhm.
and detention as a whole. And so I'm like, okay, what happened? Like somebody explain this to me. This don't make no sense, right? And then you start to understand the legislatures started to increase. And so criminalization like went up on things that were nuisance
Mhm.
or,
So let's get into that a little bit. In the Greater Cleveland Congregation, I believe, in the
okay.
organization where they were talking about juvenile bonding, I guess that along the lines of what you're talking about. And they were saying the same thing, that it seems that they say the crime is going down amongst juveniles, but it seemed like it's going up, and the numbers that we get from the county and other places appears that those numbers don't seem real to me. When you hear about the crime on a daily basis that's taking place in our communities is usually juvenile crime. Matter of fact, here goes a good one for you. I was coming into the building today, and I pulled up, and these two police officers, I thought they were following me coming into the lot. So I'm like, okay, MLK Day, right?
Here we
Exactly what
go.
here we go. So I turned and I pulled into my space, but they kept riding and they pulled up, sure enough, to a couple of cars, and they got out the car and they looked and they went open the doors, and it was a stolen car sitting in the drive in the parking lot out here.
Oh wow.
And guess what kind it was?
A Kia.
A Kia. And I said,
Yes.
man, you can pay me to buy one of those cars
Right.
right now.
Right.
But sure enough, it was a gray four-door Kia sitting at the back of the gate. And it looks like they found it and they ended up pulling it up out of here. So again, with that stuff, and that's that TikTok thing that's going on. So I just don't get that, when people say it's going down, how? I mean,
Yeah, I was literally just in a meeting last week, and I think there's a disconnect from people's lived experience
mhm.
versus what we see in the numbers.
Okay.
And so while the numbers are going down, folks' lived experience are telling us, well, that can't be true because
Correct.
I'm seeing it.
Hmm.
And both can be true at the same time,
Hmm.
right?
Hmm.
Like
Right. Right.
while we might live in silos and like within our communities and neighborhoods, and it's like, well, I'm not experiencing a
Hmm.
decrease in crime. That doesn't mean that wholesale crime is not going down.
Correct.
It may mean that we really need to target resources and activism within that community to make sure that it also reflects in those communities.
Mhm.
What we do know is that crime, when committed, is often committed by the same small group of people in the same neighborhoods.
Mhm.
And so when we talk about community policing, what it has been, oh, it's like back when community policing first was introduced
Mhm.
and the concept, it was, okay, we know if we look at our records that crime is often committed by folks within this age range.
Mhm.
And it's often committed by folks who meet certain criteria,
Mhm.
demographic, things like that. So what they were doing was they were pulling people over that met those criterias and searching for guns or weapons or whatever, things like that. And it was driving crime down. What people took who didn't have the expertise is like, okay, we'll just stop anybody who
Mm.
is black
Mhm.
and we'll try to see if they got guns or
Right.
weapons or if they got
Mhm.
felonies or warrants out or whatever. And it became a racial profiling thing.
Mhm.
And so when we misapply how we are supposed to in practice do something that started off as good, like they were taking data and
Mhm.
metrics and saying, okay,
Mhm.
we're going to target, look at this community, because this is where the crime is happening. We know it's typically happening from folks between the ages of 15 and 25, and we're going to aggressively police in that community. We
Mhm.
can drive the crime down. It ballooned, and folks started trying to do that wholesale,
Mm.
but without really applying the data. And so, what we probably need to do is talk to the folks who are in those communities and see, like, do you know who's committing these crimes?
Okay.
Are you afraid to talk, or would you be willing to talk?
Mhm.
I think we also have to like get over this notion of like stitches get snitches. We have to get back to our community having faith in our neighbors,
Mhm.
right? And being able to like keep our neighborhoods together. And then we can bring in other resources.
But do you think times have changed? Do you think your neighbors are your same neighbors anymore? People are so different these days. Everybody seem to be a little bit more wound up and touchy. Don't want to be around, don't want people to say much to them anymore. And it's not so much that I say that snitches get stitches, but hell, People just don't say nothing at all.
Yeah, but then that leads to like little girls going missing and winding up in backyards because
Correct.
folks ain't talk like because people ain't talking to their neighbors.
Hmm.
Like we need to get back to the beloved community, as
Hmm.
King would say.
Correct.
Like we have to get back to where we love our neighbors and we are in community with our neighbors. Like we cannot be so isolated.
So you in the advocacy, and I brought you on just to get your thoughts. What are some of the answers you think we could do?
And I ain't got all the answers,
No, I
Sway.
understand. You're right. I ain't got the answer, Sway, but look, I asked that to everybody. I had
Mhm.
judges on and everybody. My thing is, like you say, have all the answers neither, but I'm hoping maybe somebody hear a piece of something that somebody said and we can kind of put something together. But something has to be done. I like your approach where you say getting in the community and kind of getting out there and maybe talk to the folks and bringing the resources in to try to help in those communities. I think that's a very big start.
Yeah, I mean, okay, so there's this conversation around like defunding the police or like reallocation of funds.
Mhm.
We know that more police and more police presence does not deter crime.
Mhm.
Like that is wholesale in
Mhm.
any community. Any public policy expert will tell you like adding more police is not going to actually turn crime down.
Mhm.
What does decrease crime
Mhm.
is jobs,
That's correct. Opportunities.
a livable wage.
Mhm.
Like giving people something to do instead of being out in the streets.
Correct.
And so if we were able to like target communities, like we know which communities has the highest poverty rates. We
Mhm.
know Cleveland's children are living like 200% below the poverty line.
Mhm.
That means like everybody
Right.
struggling, right?
Right.
What can we do to bring jobs and resources, right? How do we ensure that jobs that can pay livable wages are not all the way out in Solon
Mhm.
that people gotta figure out how to get transportation over there. That is a start. Wholesale, like we know that resources need to be put in jobs.
Mhm.
We have a real issue when it comes to education.
Mhm.
If you need to have a bachelor's or a diploma to work these jobs, how are we making sure that our kids that are graduating are able to meet the requirements in order to come into these jobs?
Mhm.
And then the other thing is we need to change our criminal legal system. And I call it a criminal legal system very intentionally because it's not a justice system, it's a
Okay.
criminal legal system. When I talked earlier about juvenile facilities closing in 30 years back from the 70s, the crimes that are on the books have like increased from the 70s to now.
Mhm.
And so why is it that I don't know what the number is, but
Mhm.
times as many crimes that are on the books? Do these need to be crimes that are on the books?
Mhm.
And who do we need to talk to get this mug overturned?
Mhm.
Because some of the stuff that you was doing back in the day, if our kids do them now, they're getting arrested for it. They're getting taken down for it.
Mhm.
Like, is that equitable? Is that profit? It's profitable for somebody, but it's
Mhm.
not equitable. And so we really need to reshape it and change how that works
You
too.
know, I hear you when you say that, but I don't think the kids are committing the same type of crimes. They're worse now. They're worse. They're a lot worse.
They are worse, and there are some crimes that are worse,
Yeah.
but there are oftentimes kids that are getting caught up in the like, we
Mhm.
can't ignore kids that are getting caught up in the system because their teacher don't like how they talking to them, and they can call the police on them.
Mhm.
And they getting processed, like, kids are getting processed because the teacher don't know how to control the classroom.
Now, what I believe is what's missing is I believe that there's a need for something in between juvenile detention. We have an issue with kids who are getting kicked out of foster home for the same thing. They in a foster home with somebody and the parent or the person there just don't like the way you talk to me.
Yeah,
You totally disrespectful in my eyes.
yeah.
Maybe somebody else like it, but you're disrespectful to me. Those kids ended up going back to the Jane Edna Hunter building in places where they are left. I believe there should be a place for those kind of folks to be able to get the help that they need
I agree.
because that way they talk, they really need some help with communication. Could be some help with something they really just harboring. So I think there's a need for that. They don't need to go to the juvenile detention center. They don't need to be locked up because of the fact that we have a lot of juveniles raising themselves. You got the ones that were products of the crack babies and then the grandmamas and all of that stuff. And just a lot of kids that's out here on their own. And I think that's part of what's driving all the crime that we have. Not to mention opportunities, like you said.
I agree. We have minors that are raising themselves. I should say that we have minors who are trying to just figure it out,
Right.
get it how they live, right? And we could do a better job of like allocating resources to come up with creative ways to solve some problems.
Yeah, and we need to do something. I think I'm going to pull us out of that discussion and just stay straight up African American boys. The boys in our community is really hurting for a lot of things. They're hurting emotionally, they hurting mentally. They all over the place. And um, to the women in the community, there is so many resources that's there to help women, and it just seemed like it's not enough to help boys. And I think that's another, when we talk about bringing resources to the community, I think that's another thing that we can do better at, is looking out for African American boys and men in the community. Women have a lot. It's no slight. Y'all do an excellent job. I tell them all the time, say, hey, women get together, they have their support groups, they do all the stuff that's necessary to support each other, get behind each other, drive it. African men just don't do that. They ain't going no support groups. We ain't trying to hear all that. It's just our thing. We don't do it, but we don't do it to our demise. And to that degree, we got guys that don't understand the importance of that until they get in trouble. And then you hear them sitting there, well, I never had a dad in my life. I never had no man who taught me anything and blah, blah, blah. But along the way, when other brothers was trying to tell you how to do, man, you can't tell me nothing. I'm doing me, brother.
I don't disagree. I think that at one point I worked for the city of Cleveland. And there was an introduction by the former mayor, Frank Jackson, to put resources into the recreation centers.
Yeah, I remember that.
Yeah, so like all the rec staff was trained on toxic stress and trauma. And that was central to the work that was coming out of that initiative, so that we're talking to young people, boys particularly. There's a lot of money put into focusing on boys, and the young men that was coming in, they were playing basketball in those night programs, whatever programs they were into. But we went through extensive training. We had to understand what trauma to the brain, how we have to interact with these adolescents. Like, these are kids. Understanding the difference between asking somebody what happened to you and what's wrong with you versus what happened. So many of us are carrying things that we never discuss, never talk about. I'm from Youngstown, and people be like, oh, it's Youngstown. I'm like, no, I'm from Youngstown when like,
yeah, the mob originated out of Youngstown.
The mob,
that was the hub.
The mob, but like even like just violence in the hood. You know what I mean? Like I seen my first dead body at like 9. Like
wow.
So what does that do for a kid when you hearing them go off?
Right.
Okay, I gotta hit the floor. Like that does something to you. And when you are always living on edge, it does something to your actual nervous system. And so we got a lot of young people walking around with nervous systems that are out of whack.
Out of whack. Right.
And folks don't know how to manage or deal. And so I think we definitely need to pour more resources.
We have to, and we all, it's hard. I got young ladies I'm raising, and just the patience it takes, because it's different, totally different. This is a good segment to talk about your book, because we was just talking about women and all the other stuff you do. So she have a book, I think it's called God, Sex, and Braids. God, Sex, and Women.
God, Sex, and Hair.
God, Sex, and Hair.
The Gospel According to a Woman.
Gospel According to a Woman. Now tell me about that. Now that's interesting. See what I'm talking about? How women always doing stuff for women. The brothers ain't gonna write Afro Jesus.
Well, why would you need to when the Bible is written by all men?
Well, again, that's even more reason, right?
What?
There's even more reason. You took a segment of the Bible that you wanted women to understand more about their role in the Bible, because you felt it wasn't spoken up enough.
Right.
All I'm saying is every brothers have their disagreements on whether the Bible, Quran, and whatever, but they don't write anything that just basically talk about the things you talk about.
Most of the books is written by men. If you go through the religious section of a bookstore, most of the books are written by men.
Not religion. I'm just saying.
Well, that's why I wrote it, because I mean that's what speaks to me. But we talk about the Bible in general.
The Bible in general is most of the people is written by men.
No, it is all. The whole Bible is written by
the
men.
whole Bible is.
The whole Bible is written by men.
I'm not going to argue with you on it, because when I heard and read, I understand why you did it. You're exactly right. And listen, I'm gonna tell you what really what got me. I wanted to figure out what stories did you pull out
Did
about
you read
women.
them?
No, I'm gonna be honest. I just doing my background. I was like,
You should
whoa.
read it. It's not just for women
Okay.
because listen, I grew up in the church. I'm a
Mhm,
church baby,
mhm.
right? I love the church. Church has its flaws.
Okay.
And so I get sick of hearing male preachers preach about these women in the Bible and they have no. I'm like, where did you get that from?
Right.
What made you say that?
Mhm.
Why do y'all think that Mary Magdalene was a whore?
That's what they say.
Who said who is they?
I'm just saying that.
I'm saying who is they?
That's what they say.
Who is they?
All right,
The men preaching across the pulpit?
pretty much.
Because I don't never hear no woman from the pulpit say that Mary Magdalene was a whore.
Huh? I haven't heard a woman say
Me
that
either. So that's why I was like, well, let me just write my thoughts down on a piece of paper real quick and see
So what is your thoughts on it then?
that we need to really critically analyze the scripture. Like
Mhm.
the Bible does not say that Mary Magdalene was a whore.
Okay.
There's nothing in the scripture that says that Mary Magdalene
No, it
was a
doesn't.
prostitute.
No, it doesn't.
No, it doesn't.
But they sure said it. I grew up in the church with you too, and
Okay.
when you said it, I'm like, well, even if they didn't quite say it, they sure
No,
leaned
I
that
know
way.
they wasn't saying it. They are saying it. And I was like, well, let me go and
Mhm.
look and see what the scriptures say about Mary Magdalene. And I'm like, that's not what it says. And I believe the scripture is sacred text.
Mhm.
But I think that the scripture has been perverted by people who do not understand the position of women.
Women in ancient Middle East pretty much didn't really have
Voice.
they didn't have a voice at all, right?
And so I believe that the Lord allowed me to use my creative imagination and use my holy imagination to kind of put myself. And when you read the text, I was like, okay, let me sit. Let me just read this text and like let the pictures unfold in my mind.
Mhm.
And so when you are reading about the woman who washed Jesus' feet, it's like I was standing in the corner. I was reading the scripture. I feel like I was standing in the corner watching this woman come into the house and like people start to murmur and talk about her and be like, well, why is she even here? Like, who
Mhm.
invited her? What's she about to do?
Mhm.
Don't she know she's not welcome? And she makes her way to Jesus and like anoints his feet with her oil and like dries his feet with her hair. And it's like when you kind of take a step back and not read too quickly into that and you start to understand and you start to piece things together. And it's like you understand the sacrifice in the Old Testament that was necessary.
Mhm.
I think that when we are sitting in churches, particularly led by Black men who misinterpret the word, I gotta speak up. I gotta be like,
Well,
sir.
I think
Yeah,
religion has changed. You have a lot more women in ministry now.
certainly.
And I think people preach more out of the New Testament more than the Old Testament, which is a lot of the stuff that we talk about that was then. And, I got my own thing on religion, which I'm not atheist or anything close to that. But like you say, it's interpretation,
Yeah.
And so with that, I got the God part, I got the sex part. What's the hair part?
So when I dealt with the hair, it was really perception and like how people perceive us and how when we're looking at the scripture and we're talking about women who are in the scripture, it's like our hair
Mm.
means something to us. Like
Mhm.
even now, we go through this whole like natural type thing.
Mhm.
But we allow what is on the outside to kind of adorn us, and people make judgments or things about what they see, not really understanding where we move. And so the hair is like really not an analogy, it's imagery for when you see somebody, you see, oh, they got their hair done or they look put together. We talking about the woman who anointed Jesus. Like she walks in, and folks is like, why? Y'all see her,
Mhm.
the murmuring. And so it's like, how do we walk in our fullness and our truth and understand, regardless of what I look like, regardless of what I've been through, I got reason to be here.
Mhm.
And if I'm good with Jesus, then I'm good.
Mhm.
All y'all can talk, y'all can say whatever.
Mhm.
And so y'all can see me and it can look like one thing, which I don't really know
Mhm.
everything that I've been forgiven from. And so really is bringing us together and understanding that like what it looks like is not really what it is.
So let's talk about what you do now. You were doing some voter advocacy for the state of Ohio. I want to talk about that and what's going on with the NAACP and what you guys got going over there.
Yeah, so in my role, the role that pays me
Okay.
is I work for All Voting is Local.
Okay.
I'm the state director for Ohio. We are a grassroots or well, grass tops now, but
Mhm.
we are a group that is a nonprofit. We're in 8 different states.
Mhm.
We focus on election administration.
Mm.
So it's very narrowly tailored. Like,
Mhm.
we're not out here lobbying, we're not filing lawsuits. We're ensuring that once laws are passed,
Mhm.
it is administered equitably, and that Black folks, brown folks, young people, senior citizens, people with disabilities, they have equal access to the ballot. My role for NAACP, as we call it, is president. It is a volunteer role. And I'll be
Mhm.
telling people, give me
Right.
grace
Oh,
because they
yeah.
don't pay me for
Oh,
this.
yeah, exactly.
Voting has always been at the forefront of the NAACP.
Mhm.
Under my administration, I really want to be able to lean back into that, because while this year folks be like, oh, it's an off year. Every
Mhm.
year is an election year.
Mhm.
I tell people every year is an
Mhm.
election.
Every
Ballot.
year in Ohio, there's an
Listen,
election.
we got
Yes.
judges on the
Yes.
ballot,
Mhm.
and folks need to be out here and the
Mhm.
right people for judge. But next year will be a presidential year. And so we got a little bit of time to get these numbers up in Cleveland.
I guess what Mike DeWine just passed that voter law where you got to have what is a state ID in order to vote. There's no more passport, student ID, or any of that. You must have either a driver's license or a state ID in order to vote. This is a perfect example of your work because that's a law that was just put on the ballot, on the books rather. So, what do you guys feel on that?
So let me give some context. Ohio now, from the signing of House Bill 458,
Mhm.
Ohio now has the strictest voter ID law in the nation.
Mhm.
Right? That's like, can't get no worse than Ohio. I feel like that's always the sentiments. Can't get no worse than
Can't get no
Ohio.
worse than
Like,
Ohio, right.
come
Well,
on,
we
y'all.
rate worse than everything,
Man,
so believe that.
it's ridiculous. Okay. So it requires that you have a government issued ID. Of course, are included in that.
Oh, it
But
is?
yeah.
Okay, okay.
Of course, weren't previously included. Now, Ohio was pretty liberal in their voter ID policy, which was really helpful. Like, we had 6 different forms of ID.
Mhm.
So if you did not have a driver's license or a state issued ID, you could use a utility bill, you could use a government check,
Mm.
like you could use a military
Mhm.
ID. Like, they
Mhm.
made provisions for folks who might not have
Correct.
ID, right?
Mhm.
And that's necessary when you have folks who are extremely mobile, who
Mhm.
are transient and move a lot, and they might not update their ID as frequently. It's necessary for folks who are elderly
Mhm.
and no longer have a driver's license or state issued ID, who have caretakers that are paying their bills and things like that.
Mhm.
It's necessary for people who are incarcerated. Here in the state of Ohio, if you are incarcerated for a misdemeanor, if you're in like county jail, you still have the right to vote.
Mhm.
You can still access the ballot. And so now it's saying, well, you have to have a state issue ID. Now, they did make provision for folks who are confined voters, folks who are in jail, or folks who are in nursing homes,
Right.
hospitals, that they don't need the traditional forms of ID if they're using a 11F form.
Mhm.
But it does take away those extra provisions. And some of the other things that it does is it cuts our early voting
Yeah, right,
window
right.
that people can apply for the ballots. And for people who might show up to election day and there was something off, they might have been missing something. In our state, you had 7 days to what we call cure it.
Mm.
So you had 7 days to come back to the Board of Elections and fix the problem, cure it.
Mhm.
Now we only have 4 days. So
Wow.
elections are on Tuesdays. You have until Saturday to come and cure the ballot. That's
Wow.
if the election office is open on a Saturday.
Right.
So it makes it really difficult. So there's a lawsuit happening right now. Ohio, which is a homeless organization, like they're one of the named plaintiffs, because they're like, how do you expect homeless people to
Right.
have IDs? Homeless people still have the right to vote.
Mhm.
And under our previous law, like they were able to come in and they could bring any type of thing in. So if they were getting government assistance,
Right.
if they had something with even a no bill from a shelter, just with a name and an address on it, and they vote like that. Now they got to have a state issued ID.
But do you think that's an issue?
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, yes, it's
That's a
absolutely
huge
an issue.
issue?
It's gonna, yeah, because it is going to, one, shut people out of the system who
Mhm.
might not have IDs.
Mhm.
Now they're saying, and it still remains to be seen. They're like, okay, we're gonna give people free IDs. How y'all paying for this? Who actually are the people that are getting
They
free
say gonna
IDs?
get free ID.
That's what they said. They said the state is gonna pay for it.
Oh.
We don't have the numbers of
Right.
how much it's actually gonna cost.
Right.
So we kind of like, okay, where y'all getting this money from?
Yeah.
How are y'all paying for this?
Mm.
And you have people who have advocated for it, and it's like, well, you need an ID when you go into Target and write a check.
People writing checks, that's for sure.
Right.
I saw a lady in line pull out her checkbook the other day. I'm like, lady, you holding up this whole
You
line.
what you doing?
What
Come
you
on.
doing, man?
Come
I
on.
couldn't believe she cold pulled her checkbook out. And I was like, man, put that thing
Yeah,
away.
people ain't writing checks. He
Yeah.
like, you need a
All right.
check, you need an ID. But like people aren't
Yeah.
right. Oh, you need a passport if you're traveling. A lot of people ain't been off they block.
No, they ain't traveling. They ain't
Where they
traveling.
going?
Mm-mm.
Some of these folks ain't been to Lake Erie.
No. Now, there's a lot of folks who haven't been to Lake Erie
I
right here in
know.
this town. Right here in this town. So you guys are going to be really tough in watching how that's going to play out. And you saying there should be some lawsuits behind that as
There
well.
is currently a lawsuit that
Mhm.
is happening. And so we'll see whether the court hears it. It's going to be in the federal court. It's tricky because our federal court and our state courts are like stacked against pro democracy folks. They
Right.
like, if it's pro democracy, oh, it's a partisan, it's lefties. Like,
Right.
no, it's just trying to make sure that everyone has equal access. And that's what we do in my job. It doesn't matter if it's a right or a left party issue. Like, we want to make sure that everyone has equal access to the ballot, whether you are in urban Ohio or you're in rural Ohio. Some of the people in rural Ohio have some of the same issues that we have here in Cleveland because they don't have reliable transportation.
Mhm.
They might not have reliable internet. It takes them a long time to get to their board of elections. So if we made sure that voting is equal and accessible to everybody, we would make sure that like people are actually engaging in the democratic system.
So we know that the city of Cleveland itself proper is a city that is losing population and lost quite a bit of population. Most of the people who could get away moved out to the suburbs and left a big void. We looked at the voting trends over the last few elections, how the city of Cleveland has been in the tank. I mean, we're talking 12, 13, 14% turnout
Yeah.
on most of their elections that they've been having. The mayor race was another one where you thought we would have got a large turnout, and it was still a low turnout of voters in that particular election. Traditionally, the West Side has always outvoted the East Side of Cleveland, which wasn't nothing new. But what was very new out of it was that at certain points in history, when elections went on and black candidates was running, they always can kind of depend on the fact that they knew that the city of Cleveland had a large African American base that can help them on countywide elections as well as these citywide elections. This last midterm number showed that the West Side has really taken over and is really voting at a pace that's really outnumbering the East Side. Traditionally, Cleveland Ward 1 is a ward that
Yeah.
usually vote high and you could depend on. It voted at a point that I believe almost two wards on the West Side can almost
Outvoted.
outvoted it. And it's just at a point where we really need to look at that. So I say that to you with NAACP and what you're doing. Any plans for the city of Cleveland, or what kind of strategy you think is needed in order to really get that done?
We definitely gotta get back to like relational organizing.
Mhm.
And people be like, well, my vote don't matter. Why should I vote? People are uninspired by the candidates. They're not connecting the issues on everyday life with
Mhm.
like an actual vote. And so we have to really help people understand that your vote is just one aspect of this democratic system. I tend to say voting is the front door to the mansion of democracy.
Mhm.
There are so many different levers and floors and things that we can do in voting. But we have to help people understand that, yeah, we need you to come out to vote, but we also need you to strategize. We also need you to show up to county meetings. If we get the participatory budget, like we need you to participate in the budget. We need your voice active, not just on election days, but thereafter, because that's how you hold people accountable when you continue to show up, when you continue to be at these county meetings, when you continue to be at your ward meetings. Like, we really got to make like democracy sexy again.
So what you call it when you mentioned it?
Relational organizing.
Yeah, talk more about that.
Yeah, so we're gonna have to be knocking on doors. We're gonna have to be talking to people. We're gonna have to deputize people within the community to say, okay, you got your block.
Mhm.
You're responsible for turning people out and having these conversations within our groups and our communities to say, okay, we bringing along 5 different people. Like,
Mhm.
I'm gonna reach 5. This 5 gonna reach another 5. And so it's gonna snowball from there. That's the hope. That's the only way we're gonna get back to where we can be a stronghold. We need to be like marching to the polls. We need to be taking droves to the polls. Souls to the polls used to be like a huge thing, right? We don't have folks who are like coming out in droves anymore. And so we need to get that back.
What is it that you need, and what would you like to see the NAACP do to try to help fix that issue there?
Within the organization, we say that membership is the lifeblood of the organization. Membership is really how we do everything that we do. So we need people to join. That's the first thing. And I don't mean just like, oh, you paid $30 and you're a card carrying member of the NAACP.
Right.
No, I mean, we need you to be on a committee. We need you to do some work. I'm just one person. My committee members are just one, our executive board are just one person. We need you all out in the community. So every time you show up, they know it's somebody out here watching, and we need you involved. I always tell people, for folks who are like, well, I don't know what to do. I don't know how to get involved. Political action is the best committee to join because it helps you. We're going to be out there canvassing. We're going to be doing lit drops. We'll put on our t-shirt and we'll have some coffee and stuff for our volunteers. But we need to get back to knocking on doors and saying, hey, did you know an election is coming up? Do you know who was on the ballot? Do you know that there's judges on the ballot? And while you might not ever go down to City Hall to see the mayor, you may get a speeding ticket and wind up in front of a judge. We need you to vote for these judges, right? How can we make sure that we are bettering our community? What are you doing about this county jail?
Speaking of that,
I think that we gotta really parse out some things. I worked in the Justice Center, and I'm like, it's fine. Like, we probably could take some money and revamp it, but they're saying that the jail was so bad, so depleted that it needed to be torn down. Well, you can't tear it down because of the asbestos and but like, what I don't want to see is another facility that we increase beds in there and we jam more people. What I don't want to see. So it puts us in a rock and a hard place. I told somebody the other day, like, I'm really trying to be an abolitionist. I'm really I'll be trying to lean into that, right? Because it's like, it's the right thing to do. People should not be in cages. I genuinely think that people should not be in cages, and I'm leaning toward the abolitionist route. But then we know some folks need
crazy.
to be
They crazy out here,
and they do some things that probably warrant them to be incarcerated.
That's correct.
Some of our folks, right?
Even if it's just for a night, they should be in some place that's safe.
No, I don't think people should just be.
No, I'm just saying the place we got now, even if you're there for a night, it should be somewhere safe.
Yes.
That's all I'm saying.
Our facilities need to be safe.
It just needs to be safe.
It was folks dying in the jail.
Exactly.
Understand? Like, we need to do something, and we need to have something that people are safe and they're not dying in our county jail.
That's all.
But I also don't want to spend billions and billions of dollars on a new facility where we could actually like downgrade facilities. So kind of eliminate some of these beds and make sure that people who are coming in that use drug use and all of that, like, we got beds for them at the Adams Board, or we are making sure that there are other facilities or places they can go that they don't need to enter into the criminal legal system.
Correct.
So it's a tension. We're still trying to work through it. We haven't come to a wholesale policy because even within our board, we have differing opinions on that, right? And so we want what is best for our community. We know that some folks is going to be arrested.
Some folks need to be.
Some folks need to be.
That's correct.
And there are some folks that don't.
That's correct.
And there's probably a lot more folks who don't need to be. We are going to be looking at these judges who are taking forever to clear their docket. And so you got folks sitting in county that are just waiting for their court case to come up. Hurry up and clear these dockets. What we're going to be talking about, like, okay, these folks are running for re-election. What's the time limit on your docket? Why are you taking so long to get these people out? Where are you on cash bail? Are you using the county to just keep people incarcerated when they could be let out? Because we know cash bail just keeps people who are poor
in jail,
as opposed to people who are actually criminals. And so those are some of the things that we're working through.
So we rounded third here. I'm going to just ask you a question, then I'm going to turn this over to you. What's the most challenging aspect of being the president of the NAACP?
That people think you gotta like jump when they tell you to jump. I'd be like, y'all know I'm a volunteer, right? Like, I'm working as hard as I can.
I know that's
I'm trying. I told the folks this morning, give us grace, please give us grace. Now we got a dynamic team that is in office. It's only two of them though. We got an executive director and we have an office administrator. And so we're working through that. We have some folks on contract that can help us do some things, but our board are volunteers. And so I need folks to give us a little bit of grace. But if you got ideas and you trying to lock an arm with us, come on and be a part of this because I'm not going to turn nobody away. Let's do it. I want to work with people. I want people to come alongside of us. We've had some dynamic folks from old to young who are like, I'm rocking with you. I told them our board is intergenerational. We got some old folks who know where the bodies are buried. We got some young folks that got the legs to get shovels and move them if necessary. So, like, that is what I'm looking forward to in leading this administration. If people are interested in doing the work, come along and do the work, but don't sit around complaining about what we are and are not doing because we need people to actually do the work and carry the water out there.
Well, that's what it's going to take. It's going to take another generation of young people and different people, and I'm excited for you. I appreciate you coming on the program. And so right now, I'm going to give you this camera. This camera is for you to be able to talk to the people and tell the people about what's going on at the NAACP. If there's something you want to do, make sure you give them the contact, how they can get in touch and how they can pay that membership and all of that kind of stuff.
So you can find us at the Cleveland NAACP.org, Cleveland NAACP.org. That's where you can find our information, our events. Membership is only $30 for the year. We would love to have you. Don't just pay the 30, come be a life member. But we would love to have you actually lock in arms with us. This is our beloved community, as King would say. And so we want to make sure that our community, our organization is representative of the community. And we have folks like you who are doing the work alongside of us. We are working on political action. That is always a priority for us, but we're also interested in economic development, health, housing, and education. And so we need folks who are interested and invested in those things to come. Whether you are a parent, whether you are a retiree, whether you're a professional and you only got 2 hours a week to help alongside, that is what we will take. And so Cleveland NAACP.org is where you can find us. Membership is only $30 and we welcome you.
Thanks again, Kayla, for coming on our show, and we'll see y'all next week.